What's up YouTube? Capital G here, checking out the brand new Deep Sea Archetype that just got revealed. Who would have thought that little old Deep Sea Diva would be getting her own Archetype in a core booster set? The Archetype is water-based, it's Sea Serpent, it synergizes a ton with basically all the good water archetypes in the game, like Mermail and Atlanteans, Frogs, Barinstas, all of them can kind of be useful in this archetype, and it also has, I guess, a core theme of looking at your opponent's hand and banishing cards from their hand, which is kind of cool. Anyways, let's go ahead and check out the Deep Sea Archetype. We're going to start with Deep Sea Artisan. This is a level 1 water Sea Serpent monster. So far, the entire archetype is water and Sea Serpent base. 0 attack and 500 defense. Your first and second effects are both hard once per turn. First effect says if this card is added to the hand from the deck, you can reveal this card and then you get to look at your opponent's entire hand. So that's kind of cool, you know, looking at your opponent's entire hand. Second effect says if this card is special summon, send the top card of your deck to the graveyard, then target one level 4 or lower water monster in your graveyard except another copy of Artisan, special summon it, but its effects are negated. Okay, so this is a very interesting monster. You look at that first effect, and I mean, personally, I generally think that cards that let you look at your opponent's entire hand for free, a lot of times it makes me think back to the GX era, Confiscation, Forceful Sentry, Trap Dust Shoot, cards that have been banned for like a decade because, you know, getting that information is busted, especially in the era of hand traps. It can let you like completely play around that. But I think the second effect, and a lot of the archetype has this kind of built in, where you're excavating a card and then you kind of have like another effect tied to excavating. That seems really interesting because, correct me if I'm wrong, if you happen to mill like an Atlantean monster off the top of your deck, something like a Dragoons or a Marksman, I believe that that monster effect will be able to activate at the same time. You could potentially like pull that monster back with this effect as well, because you mill the card and then you actually target something in your graveyard. So I believe that you could like mill a Dragoons, activate the effect, and then special summon the Dragoons back, and that seems kind of crazy. So yeah, this definitely seems like a pretty solid card. And if you're wondering how you could special summon this, obviously there's 1-for-1, but you know, Deep Sea Diva just special summons like basically most of this archetype. So that's pretty cool. Anyways, the level 2 is your Deep Sea Sentry. This is a Sea Serpent water, of course, 400 attack, and it has 2000 defense. First and second are both hard once per turn. Your first effect says if this card is sent to the graveyard to activate a water monster's effect, you can banish one card from your opponent's hand face up until the end phase. Second effect, if this card is special summon, you can send the top 2 cards from your deck to the graveyard, then you get to target a level 4 or lower water monster in your graveyard except another copy of Sentry, add that card to your hand. So yeah, this is another card that kind of takes advantage of being milled to the graveyard. Like if the previous card milled this to the graveyard, you'd just be able to look at your opponent's, or no, you'd be able to just take a card out of your opponent's hand. You wouldn't be able to look at it, but being able to banish a card from your opponent's hand, maybe you had like a key hand trap or something like that, that can obviously be very powerful, even if it is only until the end of the turn. Again, if you hit the right card, that can be devastating for your opponent. Now, the special summon effect seems pretty good because it excavates more cards, and also it can help you recover a resource that maybe you expended before you happen to like special summon this card. Maybe you went for a play, maybe you did something that required like discard fodder, and maybe you just want to recover one of your water monsters back from your graveyard to your hand. So this card seems pretty solid as well. Next up, we have our last main deck monster so far. This is Deep Sea Minstrel, level 3, and this one is actually a tuner. I told you this archetype is synchro based. Deep Sea Diva is also a tuner, so you know you gotta have a couple of tuners in your archetype. This is 1200 attack and 1500 defense. Your first and second are both hard once per turn, and interesting enough, this card is very similar to just a straight up Mermail monster. Your first effect says you can discard this card and one water monster, that is all cost, reveal your opponent's entire hand, and if you do, banish one card there face up until the end phase. So this is just sniping a card out of your opponent's hand. Like goodbye to that Nibiru or that Impermanence or whatever else they had in their hand to defend themselves with. I think that's very interesting. Second effect says if this card is special summon, you can send the top 3 cards from your deck to the graveyard, then target one level 4 or lower water monster in your graveyard except the Minstrel, place it on the top or the bottom of your deck. So the deck also has a way of stacking your deck with this card's second effect. I do think that it's nice how Konami is letting this archetype excavate more cards per, I guess, level, basically. Like, these monsters all excavate the amount of cards equivalent to their level, and I could just really see you packing a bunch of, like, Atlanteans in this deck or other cards that could benefit from that. I mean, maybe you throw in some frogs, and maybe you excavate things like Rodentonen, which would be pretty nice because, obviously, that can special summon itself from the graveyard, but you look at that first effect, and you can't tell me that doesn't have natural synergy with something like Atlantean Dragoons. Maybe you pitch this card and then you pitch like a Dragoons, you're gonna get the search anyway, you take a card out of your opponent's hand so that you can combo off, and maybe there's nothing that they can do to stop you because you took that card out of their hand. Next up is their Synchro Monster. And to me, their Synchro Monster really kind of ties everything together. I think that it really makes this archetype make a lot of sense. I was like, this archetype seems like it has a little bit of potential. I'm liking its gimmick, but the Synchro Monster made everything kind of like tie in perfectly. This is Deep Sea Princess, Prima Donna. Get it? Prima Donna. Anyways, she is a level 7 Water Sea Serpent Synchro Monster. She's also a tuner, so she's not just a Synchro, but she will actually help you Synchro up the ladder, which I actually like. Her attack is 1500 and she has 2700 defense, so she's not really a world beater, and I'm a little concerned about maybe this deck's ability to do damage because I don't really see you getting a lot of damage out of her, but her effects are really good. She is completely generic. She requires one tuner plus one or more non-tuner monsters, and like Mermail, correct me if I'm wrong, hasn't Mermail historically played cards like Gungnir? Because Mermail does have tuners, they play Deep Sea Diva, so Mermail can already technically summon her. I think that's just kind of nice that she's a generic level 7. Her first and her third effects are hard once per turn. Her first effect says you can target one of your opponent's banished cards, take one level 4 or lower water monster from your deck, either add it to your hand or special summon it, and if you do, add the target to your opponent's hand. Second effect, a Synchro Monster that was Synchro summoned using this card as material cannot be targeted by an opponent's effect. Third effect, if this card is sent to the graveyard, you can target one banished card, shuffle it into your deck. So this card really takes advantage of the fact that so many of their effects let you like banish cards from your opponent's hand, but unfortunately they all return during the end phase. However, this card kind of like cheats around that, right? Because if you're using her first effect, you can basically put the card back in your opponent's hand. You got free information, but then you get to summon any level 4 or water monster, any level 4 or lower water monster from your deck, and obviously that's crazy, right? Because you could be looking at summoning like, I don't know, maybe a Swap Frog from your deck, or you could even summon just something simple like the level 1 in this archetype from your deck and go for another Synchro Monster like a Psyframe Lord Omega or a Crystal Wing Synchro Dragon, which seems kind of legitimate. I also like the fact that when she synchros up, which it's pretty easy, I mean, you should be able to synchro with this card considering her effect pulls another monster from your deck. That monster can't be targeted. I mean, I would like a Crystal Wing Synchro Dragon that can't be targeted by my opponent's impermanence or any of their targeting cards like Widowwinker or Afterburner. That seems pretty good. I think our third effect also kind of ties in to the banishing from your opponent's hand, because let's just say again that you used her effect. Let's say that you banish a couple of cards from your opponent's hand and they're going to get those cards back during the end phase. Well, you could use her effect, summon like the level 1 from your deck, go for a Psyframe Lord Omega, banish another card from their hand, and then her third effect would trigger because she's no longer, like, she went to the graveyard, and that would mean you could take one of the cards you banished from your opponent's hand, shuffle it back into the deck, and I mean, it's never coming back at that point. So that's just kind of nice. You got a little bit of information, plus you got to get a card out of their hand. So overall, like, she's a really, really good card. I wouldn't be shocked at all if this archetype got a level 10 or maybe something like a level 9 Synchro Monster as well, but I like the design of this card. Anyways, the last card is absolutely amazing, and it's a pretty simple card. This is Deep Sea Area. It's a normal spell that's a hard once per turn, and it says banish one water monster from your graveyard. That's the cost. Add one level 4 or lower sea serpent monster from your deck. This card is freaking bananas. I kind of feel like if we would have had this during the Zexal era, Mermail probably would have been like tier 0 or some shit, because this searches Deep Sea Diva. Well, for starters, it searches every card in the entire archetype, you know, that we just talked about, but it also searches freaking Deep Sea Diva, and that's important because Deep Sea Diva is a limited card. It's like one of those cards where if you open with it in Mermail, you just like auto win if it doesn't get hash blossomed. And Mermail players have always like wanted to have more copies of Deep Sea Diva. I don't know if Diva will move up on the ban list, but this is like the next best thing. because now you have a way of searching it. Also, don't forget, Nephthybis is still a world beater. If I'm not mistaken, cards like Nephthybis and Deep Sea Diva are like +2, +3 cards. They're basically like full combos. So being able to search them by just, banishing a water monster from your graveyard seems pretty effing nice. I know that Mermail, they messed around with like the second builds, but I feel like they'll be looking to play this card because being able to search Nephthybis and always kind of have that card or getting to your Diva, it's honestly just too much advantage. And the fact that it search again the entire archetype is pretty strong as well. So I think that this archetype was built to flow really well with other archetypes like Mermail. You have to play Atlanteans in here. There's too much synergy. These cards work with Atlanteans. They can excavate Atlanteans. I believe that they should trigger, and this is a very interesting archetype. So you guys let me know what you think of the Deep Sea archetype in the comment section below. Thank you guys for watching. As always, subscribe if you have not already, and turn on that notification bell for daily videos.